Speaking of social and political upheaval, I want to talk to you a little bit tonight about Iran, which is a subject that, of course, has been all over the news lately. There has been, I don't have to tell you, widespread coverage about the war and about the geopolitical tension that has been simmering over the last weeks and months. All of us have seen the headlines about Iran's nuclear program and its military capabilities, about the threat that it poses to Israel and to the region and to the rest of the world. Tonight I want to talk to you about one specific city in Iran, the city of Isfahan. You may be familiar with the city because it's gotten a considerable amount of news coverage because of its strategic value to the regime. Just to the north of the city, you can find the manufacturing complex that produces aircraft and drones and missiles, and just to the southeast of Isfahan is where you'll find the Nuclear Technology Center, the site that was targeted repeatedly during the past months in an attempt to derail Iran's progress toward producing a nuclear weapon. In many ways, the city of Isfahan has predominated our focus and our fear, as Western thinkers and strategists have paid close attention to its laboratories and its centrifuges, waiting with deep concern to see what would emerge from the hardened facilities dug deep into the rock of the Zagros Mountains. But what I want to talk to you about tonight and what I want to share with you about Isfahan is a different kind of story, because I want to tell you Isfahan's Jewish story. Isfahan does have a fascinating Jewish story, an ancient, vibrant Jewish story. Today, there are about as many Jews in the community of Isfahan as we have members here at Emmanuel. But in a community that size, there are more than a dozen synagogues. The Jews there in Isfahan trace their roots back through a 2,500-year history in Iran. Although it is smaller than it once was and more fragile, Jewish life there in Isfahan still persists in its synagogues and in its study halls and in the homes of its faithful families. So how is it that Jews came to live there in Isfahan in the first place? Well, there is a legend I want to share with you. There's a legend that answers this question, and we have the first record of that story from a book of geography written by a Persian historian whose name I had to practice, whose name is Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn al-Faqih al-Hamadani. Thank you. So this book was written about the year 900. And in it, al-Hamadani talks about the Jewish residents of Isfahan, and he tells us how and when they got there. He writes the following. When the Jews emigrated from Jerusalem in 587 BCE, they carried with them a sample of the water and soil of Jerusalem. This they did all along until they reached the city of Isfahan. And there, the water and soil resembled that of Jerusalem. So he tells us that the Jews ended up there in Isfahan after years of wandering and displacement because it was there that the earth beneath their feet and the water they drank reminded them most powerfully of what they had known in Jerusalem. And they stayed there in Isfahan because even though they'd never been there before, they had no history, they had no stories, no memories associated with that community. They stayed there because something about it felt familiar. The soil, the water, the air, the weather provided a kind of geographical deja vu that reminded them of something that would have been impossible to articulate, but was also impossible to ignore. Something that emerged wordlessly from their sacred collective past. And so they stayed and made their homes in Isfahan. Now, there's no way for us to know whether al-Hamadani's account of the origins of the Jews of Isfahan is accurate or not. We don't have any other contemporaneous evidence. We certainly have no eyewitness testimony from the Persians who would have met those Jewish newcomers in the 6th century before the Common Era. So we don't know if this is a true story or not. But what strikes me is that even if that Persian historian couldn't prove that his story was true, what he did know was that the people who read his book would not be surprised by the suggestion that Jews are the kind of people who carry pieces of Jerusalem with them. Whatever else early 10th century Persians could have known or assumed about Jews, it wouldn't have been far-fetched to them to hear that wherever we go, we carry pieces of our homeland with us. Because we still do. Wherever we go, we carry our spiritual compasses, the pieces of our collective memory that work like a kind of homing beacon to guide us through unfamiliar terrain. Our Jewish GPS technology can be calibrated in a million different ways. It could be centered on Jerusalem, like the Jews of Isfahan, or it could be focused on a cherished verse of Torah. Maybe Jewish music is what orients us, or the taste of a family recipe. Maybe that's the thing that makes us feel most powerfully like we're participating in a story that began long before we arrived, but in which we still somehow, miraculously, know our lines. In those moments, we're recognizing, we're remembering some essential part of ourselves that was just waiting to be called forth. The story about the Jews of Isfahan is not ultimately a story about history or about geography. It's not really about exile or diaspora. It's a story about identity, where identity comes from and how it is forged, how it's fed and cared for. It's about the parts of who we are that refuse to be erased, even in the face of diaspora, displacement, and destruction. There is no special name given to this date on the Jewish calendar, on this particular Shabbat, the one that falls between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaAtzma'ut, this special Shabbat that lands between Holocaust Remembrance Day and Israeli Independence Day. There's no special Jewish status in the law accorded to this particular Shabbat, but I've often thought that there should be. Because on this Shabbat, we find ourselves bookended by tragedy and triumph, flanked on one side and on the other by our community's commemorations of the most significant and formative events in modern Jewish history. And here we are in the middle, standing in a narrow corridor of the Jewish calendar, between devastation and renewal, between what has been lost and what is being rebuilt. We're in a hallway of time, calibrating our positioning systems like the Jews of ancient Isfahan, finding our way by holding on tight to the soil and water on which our people is built. We never lose our grip on our memories, the teachings, the covenants and commitments that make us who we are, even when it burns our hands to hold on to them. We wind our way through a fractured world, carrying Jerusalem with us. Not just the Jerusalem that exists as a place on a map, but the promised land that is the embodiment of the values inscribed on our hearts, those that animate our moral imagination and that project for us a vision of the world as it ought to be. On this special Shabbat without a special name, in this window of time between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaAtzma'ut, we are reminded that Jewish history can't be exhaustively defined by any single episode from our past, neither our times of dreaming nor of destruction. Jewish history is the record of our choices about what we will carry forward from one moment to the next. The dust and water of our past we will use to rebuild edifices of principle and purpose. And this process renews itself bechol dor vador, in each and every generation, when we honor the inheritances of our past, when we listen to the deep and ancient murmurs of wisdom that call out to us. It is our job, it is our sacred privilege to heed that heritage courageously as we make our way forward to the places of promise that lie ahead. So now you know a little bit about the Jewish community of Isfahan and about that legendary moment when they discovered a reflection of Jerusalem deep in the kingdom of Persia, an echo of familiarity that let them begin again and make themselves a home. And now you know why I wanted to share the story with you on this night in particular, on this in-between Shabbat, between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaAtzma'ut, when we remember the depths of what has been lost and at the same time affirm the possibility of what can still be built. because here, between those two momentous days, we are reminded that neither memory nor hope can stand alone. Each one requires and relies upon the other. All of us are carriers of ancient artifacts, things that are old and deep, and powerful, and all of us carry them with us, clutching them to our hearts like vials of earth and water from a holy city, holding them as a reminder of what the world expects of us. They are our Jewish compass. They guide our way forward. And as we walk on through our fractured world, carrying Jerusalem with us, may we, like the ancient wanderers of Isfahan, use these most valuable resources to build a world worthy of the generations to come, those who will carry on maintaining this world after we too are gone. May our work be strengthened. May our work be blessed. Amen.